What's up, cool kids? John here from What's Johnny Watching. So last week, my friend Tim over at Tim Talks Talkies issued another challenge to us in the physical media community. Now this time, he wants us to list our top 25 80s movies. Now that's a daunting task, since the 80s gave us so much in terms of comedy, action, horror, and drama. But I think I've got 25 that should satisfy his query. So, before I get into it, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and click that notification bell. Now, without further ado, let's get into my list. Now, I do have 25 here, but I also have 5 honorable mentions. These are titles that I absolutely love, but I couldn't find room for them with the 25 that I have on my list. So I'm starting off with the first musical movie that I ever saw, and it is Little Shop of Horrors. Released in 1986, this is a remake of a Roger Corman classic that had Jack Nicholson in it. And it tells the story of a plant that has come down from outer space and is found by Rick Moranis, who works in a flower shop run by the irritatingly evil Mr. Mushnick. Now, people love to come and see this plant. They're just in awe of it. But it doesn't eat normal plant food. It requires something else. Blood. So, Rick Moranis, who plays Seymour Krelborn here, he pricks his finger and starts giving the blood, and the plant starts to grow and grow and grow, and it attracts more people to the struggling business. But the few droplets of blood, it doesn't help the plant anymore. The plant begins to talk and says, "Feed me." So Seymour has no other choice but to go out and get bodies to feed this plant to keep it alive. It is a great movie. It's a wonderfully made film by Frank Oz. I love the music in this, and you have cameos in here from the late, great John Candy, and Jim Belushi's in this, and you have a amazing performance from Steve Martin, who plays a sadistic dentist, and a cameo by Bill Murray, who takes on the role that Jack Nicholson did in the original. This is an amazing film. I absolutely love it. It wasn't strong enough to make my 25. My next honorable mention is The Lost Boys. This made liking vampires cool for me, because this was the first time I had seen vampires in kind of like a teenage form, teenagers in the 80s. And I absolutely loved it. Joel Schumacher did a great job with this, coming off of doing St. Elmo's Fire. He knocked this one out of the park. You've got great performances in here from Kiefer Sutherland and Jason Patric, Academy Award winner Diane Wiest, Edward Herrmann, we still miss you, and you have the Coreys in here, Corey Feldman and Corey Haim. I love this movie, just not strong enough to make my 25. Now my next one, honorable mention, I might get a little hate on it, but it's probably the greatest werewolf movie that's ever been made. And that's An American Werewolf in London. I was absolutely amazed with the makeup in this film. It introduced me to Rick Baker. And it's also a great comedy film, too. Where you have, I think his name is David Naughton, plays the main character. And he goes over to England. He's backpacking through England with his buddy, Griffin Dunn. And they're told, to stay away from the moors after midnight. Well, they don't. So they're attacked by this werewolf. And it kills Griffin Dunn, but it wounds David Naughton to the point where he is slowly becoming a werewolf. And the transformation scene in this alone is why this is actually one of my honorable mentions. The makeup is great, but it's the transformation scene where you see him, going through all this pain and, hearing his bones crack and everything as he's transforming into this werewolf. Now, the funny thing about this is Griffin Dunn's performance. He just keeps popping up as this figment of his imagination and he just keeps looking more and more and more decayed as the film goes on. And he gives him the warning, you know, you need to end this, you need to kill yourself, or you're just going to keep doing this. This is an absolute masterpiece from John Landis. I know later on he had his own problems with the Twilight Zone movie. This is probably one of his best movies that he's made, out aside from Animal House. I absolutely love it. But again, it wasn't strong enough to make my top 25. Now my next one, honorable mention, is Poltergeist. Great ghost movie. I absolutely love it. To this day, I still won't go near a TV screen that has the static on it. You know, where I grew up in the 80s, you know, TV stations, whenever they would go off the air, they would show, you know, they would play the national anthem, and then boom, they would just hit static. And ever since this movie came out, no, I'm terrified of seeing static on a TV screen. It just scares the living shit out of me. But you had great performances in here from Craig T. Nelson and Jo Beth Williams, the late Dominic Dunn, and what else can be said? I mean, Heather O'Rourke as Carol Ann just says two words that are so iconic when she just turns her head and says, "They're here." Zelda Rubinstein is awesome in this. This is an absolutely amazing horror film. But it also comes with some controversy, because a lot of people say, well, who actually directed this? Was it Tobe Hooper or was it Steven Spielberg? When you watch this, you can see Spielberg's fingerprints all over this. I mean, this looks exactly like a Spielberg film should look. But I don't know. I'm leaning towards, you know, Spielberg probably did a little more work than what everybody else thinks. But it doesn't matter. This is a great film. Just wasn't strong enough to be in my top 25. Now, my last honorable mention here. I know I'm rambling on, but this is my last one. And they just announced a 4K for it, and I'm so excited. But it's Monster Squad. Growing up in the 80s, you know, we had Ghostbusters, and you had the Monster Squad. If you don't know, the Monster Squad is kind of like the Goonies meets Ghostbusters, where you have this group of kids who have to save the world from, they're battling like universal monsters. You have Dracula, you know, the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Wolfman Frankenstein, the Mummy, but they're not called that because of licensing rights. But this is an absolutely kick-ass film. I am so glad that they are adding this or releasing this in 4K. I'm glad I own it. It's not strong enough with my others to actually include in the top 25. But just remember one thing. Wolfman's got nards. Now we're on to the 25. Starting with 25, I have the nastiest of the nasty. The one that was banned almost all over the world. And it is Rogerio Deodato's classic Cannibal Holocaust. Without this movie, we do not have the found footage genre that we have today. This set the standard. Yes, there are some scenes in here that are truly abhorrent and shocking. There is animal cruelty in this. You know, if you haven't seen it, and if you don't like seeing that stuff, yeah, it's in there. And there's sexual assault scenes in here. But this is absolutely amazing if you look at it within the context of the found footage genre. This is absolutely amazing. I love this film. I was introduced to this film watching the last drive-in. Joe Bob Briggs was the only way first time I could ever watch it. I had to have the 4K of it, but this is great. Now, number 24. It's a love obsession of mine. I've loved this movie ever since I was a kid, and it's Howard the Duck. Yes, I know it gets some hate, and no, I don't give a shit. This was Marvel's really first attempt to have one of their characters on the big screen. Yes, it flopped at the box office, but it has this huge cult following. I love this movie. You have Leah Thompson in here, who just come off her success from Back to the Future. You have Tim Robbins in here, who would later go on to win an Academy Award. You have that piece of human shit, Jeffrey Jones, in here. But it deals with a duck who is transported from his own world called Duck World, and he's brought to Earth, and he's trying to find his way on planet Earth, and it's all the things that he runs up against. And it ends with, whether or not he should save the world that he's on now or return to the world that he's from. And he makes the sacrifice that he wants to stay here. This is an absolutely wonderful movie. I love this. I don't give a shit if people hate this. This is a great movie. I wish I could rank it higher, but I've got more on here that are a little bit better. Now, number 23 also announced it was getting a 4K release, and it's about time. It's every one of the greatest high school movies made. It's Ferris Bueller's Day Off. This movie made Matthew Broderick a star. You've got Alan Ruck in this, Mia Sara, and that human piece of shit, Jeffrey Jones. This is a classic high school skip day movie. We've all wanted to do it. We just didn't have, the cool car from our friend to take on a joyride throughout the city of Chicago. The stuff he gets into in this day, and all the students in high school absolutely love him except for his sister. And the very end of the movie, when he's trying to race back home on foot to beat his parents from catching him from skipping school, is absolutely amazing. I love it. I especially love the secretary, the principal. She's pulling pencils out of her hair. It's absolutely wonderful. I love this, and I can't wait to get the 4K. Now, number 22. This was a toughie because I love John Carpenter so much, and I didn't know which one of his films to choose, but I had to go with The Fog. And this is one of the best ghost stories that I've ever seen on film. You have this, just the atmosphere of, I think it's Amity Bay. I believe that's what it's called. And you have this fog just rolls in on this specific date. And within the fog, you have these like zombie pirates. And they're just killing everything in their way to get to, I want to say it's this church. They want to get, there was a leper colony back in the 1500s, I believe, and they tried to come ashore, but the townsfolk decided to turn off the lighthouse, or they did something and it made the boat crash and everybody died, so they became ghosts, and the townsfolk came and took all their gold and they melted it down. They made this huge cross. And now the ghosts have come back, and they want that cross, and they're trying to exact revenge on the living members of the townsfolk, the surviving descendants of the townsfolk. This is an absolutely amazing John Carpenter film. Jamie Lee Curtis is in this, and the always wonderful kick-ass Tom Atkins is in this. I love this movie. Hal Holbrook plays the priest who is the last descendant of the people of the original colonists, and it's just absolutely wonderful. I love this. I had a hard time deciding whether it was this one or it was The Thing. I like this one better than I like The Thing. Now, on to number 21. Child's Play. I love this movie. I love the idea of a killer doll out. One that you would not think would hurt anybody, but it's just this psychotic doll going around and killing people. And, that you have the Academy Award nominated Brad Dourif giving the voice of Chucky, this foul-mouthed doll, when he's around everybody else except for Andy, which is, the kid who picks him, or his mother, Andy's mother gives him the doll as a birthday present. And he's going around and he's trying to find a new body to inhabit, otherwise he'd be stuck as this doll forever. And he's just foul-mouthed and just his cackling laugh. I absolutely love this. Chris Sarandon's great in this. And my favorite scene of the whole movie is when the old couple get into the elevator. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. When the old couple get into the elevator and Chucky is just laying on the floor. They're like, oh, that's an ugly doll. And then they get off, and Chucky just lays there and like, fuck you. I love that scene, and I love Child's Play. Now, number 20 is a technical, I want to say technical and visual masterpiece for the time it was released, and it was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I would like to have been a fly on the wall in those negotiating meetings of where Zemeckis tried to get, the Warner Brothers animated characters to be in the same film with the Disney animated characters and give them like enough screen time. It had to have been an amazing meeting. But in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you got Bob Hoskins, who plays Eddie Valiant. He's down on his luck, private detective. And he's hired by this movie studio to get pictures of Marvin Acme playing Hanky Panky with that studio's #1 star, Roger Rabbit, trying to get pictures of his wife, like, cheating on him. Well, what happens is someone murders Marvin Acme, and everyone's blaming Roger for it because, his wife cheated on him, so he's going to go he's going to go kill Marvin Acme. And what happens is, Eddie reluctantly teams up with Roger to unravel the mystery of, who killed Marvin Acme. And you have all these great Disney characters and Warner Brothers characters all showing up, having equal screen time. It's just, when you're a kid growing up and you see these cartoons, you're like, how are they doing this? It was just amazing watching this on screen. And Christopher Lloyd gives an amazing performance as this deranged Judge Doom who is sadistic and cruel. And when he pulls out, this shoe, this animated shoe, and he opens up this canister of what they call the dip, and he just dips it in there, and it disintegrates anything it touches that's animated. But you see the look of pain and anguish on that shoe's eyes as he's dipping it in, killing it. It's unnerving. But this is an amazing movie. I love this, and I need to upgrade this on 4K. But I love this. Now, number 19 was a movie that I kind of snuck into when I was a kid, and I love it. It's a great horror movie, and it's The Return of the Living Dead. Now, this is in the same vein of, George Romero's classic Night of the Living Dead series, but when he and Russo split up because they were the co-writers, he was given the ability to write his own story, his own dead stories. That's why it's Living Dead, and George didn't use Living Dead again after Night of the Living Dead. But here you have two guys who are working in it's like a medical supply company, played by James Karen and Tom Matthews. And they go downstairs, and they unwittingly unleash this gas that brings the corpses in the neighboring cemetery back to life. And what happens is it has the elements of Night of the Living Dead in it, where they're trying to barricade themselves in and try to kill the corpses, but you can't kill them. And that's what terrified me the most about this. I absolutely love the blood and the gore, and the humor in this is really good. Especially, when Tom Matthews is complaining about it getting all the stuff on him, and James Karen looks at him and says, "Watch your tongue, boy, if you like this job." I absolutely love it. It's a great send-up of the genre, and Linnea Quigley as Trash dancing on that tombstone. That's very nice. Now, number 18 is a lot of people's favorite of this particular series, and it's Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2. Now, Evil Dead 2 and Evil Dead 1 are almost the same picture in the sense that Evil Dead 2 is basically, the first 10 minutes of it, they just remade the Evil Dead. They just compacted everything down, then they expanded it in Evil Dead 2. And, in the Evil Dead 2, we still get, Ash, Bruce Campbell's Ash, as he's fighting whatever the hell it is from that Book of the Dead. But you get more characters in this. And at the very end of this, we get the iconic image of Ash that we all love, where he's got the double barrel shotgun and he's got the chainsaw on his hand. I absolutely love this. The gore in it, the humor in it. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm glad I have it. And it's one of the best of the 80s, in my opinion. Now, number 17. Although it's not the first in the buddy cop genre, I believe that goes to Running Scared, which was released the year before. But this is probably the best of the ones that were ever made. And it's Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon I absolutely love Lethal Weapon. I believe it's one of the best of the 1980s. Some can make an argument over Lethal Weapon 2 might be a little bit better. But this is an origin story, and this was designed to be the only movie released. They had no idea they were going to make 2, 3, and 4. But you have Mel Gibson as Martin Riggs, Danny Glover as Roger Murtaugh, both cops. Murtaugh has a family, Riggs doesn't, and Riggs is suicidal, so he acts crazy and everything like that, and they kind of balance each other out. They're trying to bring down a drug lord. But Gary Busey in this is phenomenal as this batshit crazy mercenary who, at the very end of the film, they have this huge fight, this bloody fight between Gary Busey's character, Mr. Joshua, and Martin Riggs out on the front lawn of Murtaugh's now destroyed home. You have rain going everywhere, the spotlights and everything. It is a great fight. I absolutely love it. And they need, Warner Brothers, get on this. Release the director's cuts of the Lethal Weapon series. Now, number 16. Number 16 is a movie that I have seen every year since it's been out. Now, I always watch it at Thanksgiving. And to me, this is the best performance of John Candy I have ever seen on screen. And it is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. This is one of the best, I guess, reluctant buddy films. Steve Martin plays this ad executive who's in New York, and he's pitching an idea, and he wants to hurry up and get back home to Chicago for Thanksgiving dinner with his family. And this meeting just runs over, and he's rushing to the airport, and he's trying to hail a cab, and he bribes the cabbie, but John Candy comes up and steals the cab from him. And what begins is just this arduous trek from New York to Chicago, which takes them to St. Louis, I believe to Kansas, where they, everywhere they go, they think they're on their way home. They just end up getting turned around. There's a scene, the Steve Martin scene when he's going to pick up his rental car and he finds out they don't have the reservation. He just launches into this F-bomb tirade to this poor attendant, this poor clerk, and he just lets her have it. Just, I want my fucking car. It's a classic Steve Martin scene. It's one of the best he's ever had on screen. But John Candy gives his best performance. I know a lot of people say it's Uncle Buck, but it's in this as Dell, the lonely man. He wants a friend, and at the very end of the movie, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. When Steve Martin's character is riding the L train to go back home, and he starts thinking about his trip with John Candy, and he starts noticing little things that Candy has said. And he comes back to him and he says, "You don't have a home. You don't have a family." And he said, "I don't have a home." So he ends up taking him. My God, I'm getting goosebumps now. He takes him home. There's that scene where they're walking down the street carrying each one of them has their hand on Dell's trunk, and they're walking to Neil's house, and he's welcoming him to enjoy Thanksgiving dinner with his family. It's an absolutely wonderful film. I know the transfer on this isn't great, but I don't care. This is John Candy's best performance I've ever seen. Now, number 15, I remember watching this as a child, and I absolutely fell in love with it. A lot of people call it a horror film. I have never called it that. I call it sci-fi / love story, and that is David Cronenberg's remake of The Fly. This is David Cronenberg's masterpiece. I don't care what anyone says. It is that good. And it is a remake from it was in the 1950s, I believe. But that movie is really good too, but this one is superior. You have Jeff Goldblum, who plays a scientist, Martin Brundle, he's invented teleportation, and he's trying to tell his story to this reporter played by Gina Davis. And he gets jealous one night. He thinks that she's like stepping out on him. So he decides to teleport himself, and he's not alone. A housefly gets in with him, and you see this change from this mild-mannered scientist into this abomination of emotion. And it's just, the transformation alone is stunning. The use of makeup effects in this is by far the best I've ever seen, and it still holds up. What Chris Walas and Stefan Dupuis were able to do is just amazing. This film is absolutely amazing. It is Cronenberg's masterpiece. I don't care what anyone says. I would absolutely love to have a 4K of this. So, Disney, let it go to somebody. Just give me a 4K of this. Now, number 14, it's a sci-fi movie. It does have some horror elements in it. But, I mean, it's just a badass movie. And it is RoboCop. Peter Weller, this is his best performance, plays Alex Murphy, a Detroit cop who's gunned down in the most vicious way. This still turns my stomach to this day, watching him get gunned down. But this is a great movie. He's turned into this cyborg cop, and he goes around he scares the living hell out of everybody. Criminals don't like him. He's just an absolutely badass cop in this. And then he starts to realize, he starts thinking for himself, and OCP doesn't want that to happen, so they try to shut him down. Just doesn't do it. He's a good cop. He's a badass cop. I absolutely love this movie, and I know you guys like it too. Now, number 13. I love the National Lampoon movies, and I had a hard time picking which one should make this list. But in the end, it's the original. It's the Mac Daddy. It's Vacation. For those of you who have ever been on a vacation or who have tried to plan a vacation, we all know what Clark Griswold goes through. We want our vacations to be perfect. No matter what happens, nothing's going to stop us from getting to our destination. Chevy Chase, this is probably his second best performance. I like him in Fletch more than I did this. But this is a great performance by Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo and Anthony Michael Hall and Dana Barron as his wife and kids. John Candy's in this. Brian Doyle Murphy's in this. I mean, Brian Doyle Murphy. It's Murray. Good God, John. What's wrong with you? Brian Doyle Murray's in this. And Eugene Levy's in this. It's an absolutely wonderful movie. I love it. It still holds up. And the 4K looks really, really good. Now, we are at number 12. Number 12, in my opinion, this is the best high school movie that's ever been made. And it's my favorite John Hughes movie. And it's The Breakfast Club. This movie hits on so many levels. If you're going through high school, the cliques. You identify with every single one of these people in here. This movie made stars out of every single one of these people in here. Judd Nelson, Ali Sheedy, Molly Ringwald, Anthony Michael Hall, and Emilio Estevez. The late, great Paul Gleason gives a great performance in this. It's really great. It holds up to this day. And I believe this is the best John Hughes movie that's ever been made. I need a 4K. Give me a 4K Universal. Number 11. I remember going to see this opening weekend, and it was the only time I'd ever experienced absolute pandemonium. But it's Batman 89. This Tim Burton's Batman is it's a technical achievement. I mean, Michael Keaton will forever be known as Batman in this. I think he still says I'm Batman. Jack Nicholson gives a great performance as Joker. I didn't think anyone could ever top his performance until I saw, Heath Ledger's performance. But Jack Palance is in here. Robert Wall's in here. Billy D. Williams. I mean, come on. And Kim Basinger. We all wanted Vicky Vale. Don't deny it. But this is a great movie. It's a great origin story. I absolutely love it. I don't like the fact, how they revealed, who killed Bruce Wayne's parents. I didn't like that. But aside from that, this is an absolutely amazing film. I'm glad I have it, and I really do need to upgrade to the 4K. All right, we are now up to number 10, the last 10, the top 10. And number 10, welcome to the party, pal. Die Hard. What else can be said about Die Hard? This is a classic 80s film. This made Bruce Willis a superstar almost overnight. I mean, come on, just one man. He's a one-man army trying to save his wife from about 10 to 15 terrorists in a high-rise in LA. He's all by himself, and he has no shoes on. This is a great film. Alan Rickman, we miss you, Alan Rickman. Gives one of the greatest villain performances in cinema history in this. This is an absolute blast. This is a kick-ass film. I absolutely love it. I do not want them to reboot this. It would absolutely suck. Die Hard. Top 10. Now, number 9 is probably one of the best action films. Everybody likes it. And it's Predator. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jesse the Body Ventura, Carl Weathers, and the late Kevin Peter Hall as the Predator itself. Great film. You have these bunch of commandos, coming into the South American jungle, and they're trying to get some information from some of the rebels that are there, but they're not alone. There's an alien there who's hunting people for sport. And I mean, come on. An alien versus Arnold Schwarzenegger. Sign my fat ass up. I love this movie. Everybody loves this movie. I don't know how good it would have been had they kept Jean-Claude Van Damme as the Predator. He looks kind of small and diminutive. But Kevin Peter Hall pulls it off as the Predator. And I believe, don't hold me to it, but I want to say that James Cameron himself helped give Stan Winston the design for the Predator, which just moves Cameron up on my list even further. This is an absolute blast. I love this movie. Number 8, probably the best kids movie of the 80s, and that's Goonies. What else can be said about Goonies? If you were a kid growing up in the 80s, you saw Goonies, you wanted to go out and find a treasure map and with your friends to try to go find some gold, some jewels. I absolutely love this movie. I don't know if I would welcome a sequel because I think it's been too long. But Ke Huy Quan, Academy Award winner. Okay, I might go into it. You got great performances in here, especially from Chunk, the late John Matuzak, who plays, Sloth, Anne Ramsey, who plays Mama Fratelli. I love this movie. I really need to upgrade to the 4K, but yeah. I'd be okay with a Goonies sequel. I do not want a Goonies reboot. But yeah, that's number 8. Now, number 7, I believe is the best horror film that was made in the 80s. And I had trouble whether or not to select this one or to select another one. So I asked a friend of mine, which one would he select? And we both kind of came to the same agreement. And it's Wes Craven's original Nightmare on Elm Street. Without this movie, we don't have Freddy Krueger. This is probably the best one out of the entire Nightmare series. Maybe Dream Warriors is a close second. But I mean, this movie made Robert Englund an international star. I love this movie. You got Heather Langenkamp in here. John Saxon plays a great dad in this. Plays Nancy's father in this. This is a great movie. Even a young Johnny Depp in this. His kill scene in that movie is absolutely amazing. I love this movie. Warner Brothers, release the 4Ks of the Nightmare series. You can do it. Don't be afraid. Go ahead and give us the 4Ks of the Nightmare series. Now we are down to number 6. And number 6 is really the film that really pushed James Cameron over the top, and it's Aliens. Now, I love the original Alien movie from Ridley Scott. I love that. I for some reason, I had never saw that movie before I saw Aliens. So when I saw Aliens for the first time, I mean, this just knocked me off my feet. This was a badass film with action and horror elements. And you have Sigourney Weaver proving to everyone that women can be kick-ass leaders too. And she was even nominated for an Academy Award for this. From the special effects to the sound, the visuals, everything. James Cameron knocked it out of the park with this. I heard a story that, he went in to pitch the idea to the executives at Fox, and he just wrote Alien and then wrote a $sign after the N in Aliens, because it would make huge bank, and it really did. It stamped him, in my opinion, as an up-and-coming director who was going to be a force to be reckoned with. I know he did Terminator, but this one just shot him into the stratosphere. I love Aliens. Again, Disney. Give me the 4K. Now we are down to my top 5. And for number 5, the most recent one that just came out. It was the Indiana Jones series, but my number 5 has to be Raiders of the Lost Ark. I love Raiders. I love the Temple of Doom 2. It has more comedic elements in it. And that was the first one I ever saw, because I had no idea, Indiana Jones was in Raiders, because it wasn't labeled Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. If you remember, it was just Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I didn't put that connection together. I saw Raiders later on. But Raiders of the Lost Ark is an absolutely wonderful film. Harrison Ford, Karen Allen, even John Rhys-Davies as Sala. I love this film. The effects in it, especially when they're opening of the Ark, the faces melting and everything. It's absolutely wonderful. I love it. It's an adventure film. It made me want to try to become an archaeologist, and then I realized you have to go to school for that. And as you can see, I didn't do it. But I absolutely love the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, number 3, I'll probably get hate for this, but my number 3 is Back to the Future. Actually, number 4. Number 4 is Back to the Future. I'm jumping ahead of myself here. But Back to the Future. I watched this film repeatedly when it first came out on VHS. I mean, come on. If you had the ability to have a time machine, where would you go? Would you go back to high school? Would you go back to this date or that date? I mean, Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly. It's an iconic role. He's still identified with that role to this day. Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown. I know he played Reverend Jim on Taxi, but more people know him as Doc Brown. It's an absolutely amazing film. I did have, I posted a question out there, how did Einstein get back? And then someone answered it. So now I understand that part. But it's almost a perfect film. I absolutely love it. It still holds up to this day. And let's face it, who wouldn't want a DeLorean time machine? I mean, come on. You know you want one. Now, number 3 is the first movie. Actually, it's not. Yeah, number 3 The first movie that I ever remember going to go watch as a kid, and that's E.T. E.T. is one of the greatest films that's ever been made. No one on earth will dispute that fact. E.T. should have won an Academy Award for Spielberg, but, it didn't, and that's okay. But you've got, this alien who gets, these aliens come to Earth, and I guess they're searching for plant life. They're studying, plant life, and they realize they've been spotted, so they leave, and they leave him behind. And he's lost, and he's trying to get to his family, and he ends up being cinema's first home invader. That's right, I said it. E.T. is a home invader because he breaks into Elliot's house. But just the story between Elliot and E.T. is so touching. And it's just absolutely, it moves me. It almost moves me to tears. Actually, it did move me to tears. The very end of the movie, when I watched this recently, when E.T. sang his goodbyes and he said, I'll be right here. I just lost it. I just started crying uncontrollably, crying like a baby. But I absolutely love this movie. I wish I could have ranked this higher, but my other two, you'll understand why. Now for my number 2, Ghostbusters. I absolutely love Ghostbusters. I have talked at great lengths about my love for Ghostbusters. This still holds up. I love this movie, and that's where I'm going to leave it, because if you've seen my other videos, I've talked about Ghostbusters a lot. So I think I've said everything I need to say about Ghostbusters. Now, my number 1 favorite or top 1980s movie, come on. It's The Empire Strikes Back. This is the best Star Wars movie that's ever been made, at least the best Star Wars story that's ever been made. You have great performances here from Harrison Ford and from Mark Hamill, especially when he finds out, at the very end. I don't care. I'm going to spoil it because, this over 40 years old. You should know what this movie is. He finds out who his father is and everything. You have Billy D. Williams' first appearance as Lando Calrissian. You have the ice planet Hoth, cutting open of the Tauntaun and everything. It was so cool. Harrison Ford, I love you. I know. This is an amazing film. I love this. I don't know if I'll upgrade this to 4K because this is the original theatrical versions of it. But I love this film. So, there you have it. You have my top 25 80s films plus some honorable mentions. What are your guys' top 25 80s films? Let me know down in the comment section below. Or better yet, go make your own video of it. I would love to see it, and I know everybody else would love to see it. So before I go, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, click that notification bell. So until next time, what are you watching today?